very important verse from the 3rd canto, 25th chapter, 38th verse, 3:25-38. Maharaj particularly liked this purport to this verse very much, and he enjoyed reading the purport as well as the verse many times. So we should look at this verse and try and understand very nice points from this verse. Nakarhichin matparaha shantarupe nang shanti no me nimisho lediheti yeshamaham priya atmasutascha sakha guru sukrido daivamishtam nakarhinchin matparaha shantarupe nam shanti no me nimisho lediheti yeshamaham priya atmasutascha sakha guru sukrido daivamishtam nakarhinchin matparaha shantarupe nam shanti no me nimisho lediheti yeshamaham priya atmasutascha sakha guru sukrido daivamishtam. Anyone likes to repeat?
Nakarhichin
matparaha shantarupe
nakshanti no
nimisho lediheti yeshamaham priya atmasutascha sakha guru shuido daivamishtam.
Nakarhichin
matparaha shantarupe
nakshanti no me nimisho lediheti yeshamaham priya atmasutascha sakha guru sukrido daivamishtam. Nakarhichin matparaha shantarupe nakshanti no me nimisho lediheti yeshamaham priya atmasutascha sakha guru sukrido daivamishtam.
Nakarhichin matparaha shantarupe nakshanti no me nimisho lediheti yeshamaham priya atmasutascha sakha guru sukrido daivamishtam.
Nakarhichin
matparaha shantarupe
nakshanti no me
nimisho lediheti
Kaichit,
Kaichit,
ever,
ever,
Matparaha,
Matparaha,
my devotees,
my devotees,
Shanta Rupe,
Shantarupe,
O Mother,
O Mother,
Nakshanti,
Nakshanti,
will lose,
will lose,
no,
no,
not,
not,
may,
may,
my,
my,
Animishaha,
Animishaha,
time,
time,
lady,
lady,
destroys,
destroys,
Etihi,
Etihi,
weapon,
weapon,
Yesham,
Yesham,
of whom,
of whom,
Aham,
I,
I, Priyaha,
Priyaha,
dear,
dear,
Atma,
Atma,
self,
self,
Sutaha,
Sutaha,
son,
son,
Cha,
Cha,
and Sakha,
Sakha,
friend,
friend,
Guruhu,
Guruhu,
preceptor,
preceptor,
Subhridaha,
Subhridaha,
benefactor,
benefactor,
Daivam,
Daivam,
deity,
deity,
Ishtam,
Ishtam,
chosen.
chosen.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki
Jai.
Please repeat the translation. The Lord continued.
The Lord continued.
My dear mother,
My dear mother,
devotees,
devotees,
who receive
such
transcendental opulences,
transcendental opulences
are never bereft of them.
are never bereft of them.
Neither weapons,
Neither weapons,
nor the change of time,
nor the change of time
can destroy
can destroy
such opulences.
such opulences.
Because
Because
the devotees,
the devotees
accept me
accept me
as their friend,
as their friend,
their relative,
their relative,
their son, preceptor,
preceptor, benefactor,
supreme deity.
and
supreme deity.
They cannot be deprived
They cannot be deprived
of their possessions
of their possessions
at any time.
at any time.
Please hear the purport. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that one may elevate himself to the higher planetary systems even up to Brahmaloka by dint of pious activities. But when the effects of such pious activities are finished, one again comes back to this earth to begin a new life of activities. Thus, even though one is promoted to the higher planetary system for enjoyment and a long duration of life, still that is not a permanent settlement. But as far as the devotees are concerned, they are assets. The achievement of devotional service and the consequent opulence of Vaikuntha, even on this planet, are never destroyed. In this verse, Kapila Dev addresses his mother as Shanta Rupa, indicating that the opulences of devotees are fixed because the devotees are eternally fixed in the Vaikuntha atmosphere, which is called Shanta Rupa because it is in the mode of pure goodness, undisturbed by the modes of passion and ignorance. Once one is fixed in the devotional service of the Lord, his position of transcendental service cannot be destroyed, and the pleasure and service simply increase unlimitedly. For the devotees engaged in Krishna consciousness, in the Vaikuntha atmosphere, there is no influence of time. In the material world, the influence of time destroys everything, but in the Vaikuntha atmosphere, there is no influence of time or of the demigods, because there are no demigods in the Vaikuntha planets. Here, our activities are controlled by different demigods. Even if we move our hand and leg, the action is controlled by the demigods. But in the Vaikuntha atmosphere, there is no influence of the demigods or of time. Therefore, there is no question of destruction. When the time element is present, there is the certainty of destruction. But when there is no time element, past, present or future, then everything is eternal. Therefore, this verse uses the word Nanam Shanti, indicating that the transcendental opulences will never be destroyed. The reason for freedom from destruction is also described. The devotees accept the Supreme Lord as the most dear personality and reciprocate with Him in different relationships. They accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the dearmost friend, the dearmost relative, the dearmost son, the dearmost preceptor, the dearmost well-wisher, or the dearmost deity. The Lord is eternal. Therefore, any relationship in which we accept Him is also eternal. It is clearly confirmed herein that the relationships cannot be destroyed, and therefore the opulences of those relationships are never destroyed. Every living entity has the propensity to love someone. We can see that if someone has no object of love, he generally directs his love to a pet animal, like a cat or a dog. Thus, the eternal propensity for love in all living entities is always searching for a place to reside. From this verse, we can learn that we can love the Supreme Personality of Godhead as our dearmost object, as a friend, as a son, as a preceptor, or as a well-wisher, and there will be no cheating, and no end to such love. We shall eternally enjoy the relationship with the Supreme Lord in different aspects. A special feature of this verse is the acceptance of the Supreme Lord as the Supreme Preceptor. Bhagavad Gita was spoken directly by the Supreme Lord, and Arjuna accepted Krishna as Guru or spiritual master. Similarly, we should accept only Krishna as the Supreme Spiritual Master. Krishna, of course, means Krishna and his confidential devotees. Krishna is not alone. When we speak of Krishna, Krishna means Krishna in his name, in his form, in his qualities, in his abode, and in his associates. Krishna is never alone, for the devotees of Krishna are not impersonalists. For example, a king is always associated with his secretary, his commander, his servant, and so much paraphernalia. As soon as we accept Krishna and his associates as our preceptors, no ill effects can destroy our knowledge. In the material world, the knowledge which we acquire may change because of the influence of time, but nevertheless, the conclusions received from Bhagavad Gita directly from the speeches of the Supreme Lord Krishna can never change. There is no use interpreting Bhagavad Gita. It is eternal. Krishna, the Supreme Lord, should be accepted as one's best friend. He will never cheat. He will always give his friendly advice and friendly protection to the devotee. If Krishna is accepted as a son, he will never die. Here we have a very loving son or child, but the father and mother or those who are affectionate towards him always hope, may my son not die. But Krishna actually never will die. Therefore, those who accept Krishna as, or the Supreme Lord as their son will never be bereft of their son. In many instances, devotees have accepted the deity as a son. In Bengal, there are many such instances. And even after the death of the devotee, the deity performs a Shraddha ceremony for the father. The relationship is never destroyed. People are accustomed to worship different forms of demigods, but in Bhagavad Gita, such a mentality is condemned. Therefore, one should be intelligent enough to worship only the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his different forms, such as Lakshmi Narayan, Sitaram, and Radha Krishna. Thus one will never be cheated. By worshipping the demigods, one may elevate himself to the higher planets, but during the dissolution of the material world, the deity and the abode of the deity will be destroyed. But one who worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead is promoted to the Vaikuntha planets, where there is no influence of time, destruction, or annihilation. The conclusion is that the time influence cannot act upon devotees who have accepted the Supreme Personality of Godhead as everything. Such an amazing book. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnana-Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri-Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya-Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Yadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tathakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Shri Vishakanitamscha He Krishna Guna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Govisha Mohikatana Radha Madhanu Sute Tattakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Namo Mahapadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Krishna Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Na Karhinchin matparaha shantarupe nam shanti no me nimisho lidihiti yeshamaham priya atma sutascha sakha guru suhridam daivamishtam. So this verse is a very important verse because the starting point to understand in this verse is that there is no loss to devotional service. This is very important. There is no loss. And we should always remember what Narada Muni advised Vyas Bhagavan in the first canto, 5th chapter. I think it is the 17th verse. Tyaktva swadharmam charanambujam hare bhajan napakvo atapate tato yadi yatra kvava bhadramabudamusya kim kovarta apto abhayatam swadharmataha. In this verse, very nicely it is stated, and Prabhupada quotes this verse. One who has forsaken his material occupations to engage himself in devotional service to the Lord may sometimes fall down. It's true. Sometimes devotees take up devotional service, but sometimes in trying to perform bhakti, there may be some fall downs. But because they are in an immature stage, that fall down can happen. But Narada Muni tells Vyasadeva, there is no danger even if the devotee is unsuccessful. There is no danger. So this is something very important. When we take up devotional service, even if sometimes we may, at some point or another, we may lose focus, we may have what we call a fall down, we may have what we call some discrepancies in our devotional service, but that is very often because of our own immaturity. But Bhagavatam tells us that doesn't mean that we have completely lost. But on the other hand, Narada Muni says there is that situation where there is a non-devotee. He may be very expert in his material occupations. He may be fully engaged in his occupational duties. But Bhagavatam tells us, even if he is engaged perfectly, if he is not engaged in any form of devotional service, ultimately he does not gain anything. This is an important equation for us to keep in mind. The devotee who is unsuccessful in maybe sustaining his devotional service with great perfection, he is actually not unsuccessful ultimately. You have heard of the Christian phrase in the Bible that says, what profited the man who gains the entire world but loseth his soul? That's exactly what this Bhagavatam verse means. Even if we gain everything in this material world, the fact is we are going to lose it. But if we gain devotional service, that devotional service we will never lose. That is the meaning of opulence. The opulence that this verse refers to is not wealth. It is not material wealth. Because you and I know that material wealth will leave. And no matter whatever we try to keep this material wealth with us, it must deteriorate. So when one takes up devotional service, Bhagavatam tells us, the wonderful point of devotional service is that we will never, somehow or another, we will never leave the lotus feet of Krishna. There may have been many devotees in our movement who may have left the institution, so to speak, but they have never left devotional service. And even if they may not be so active as they were before, they are still attracted to Krishna. So this is a very important point. Somehow or another, one who comes to the lotus feet of Krishna, Krishna never forgets that person. We may forget Krishna, but Krishna never forgets us. And Bhagavatam also tells us, the moment we are engaged in some form of devotional service, then somehow or another, Krishna will make all arrangements for us to continue that service. That's another important thing. See, you are all struggling in your own material matters. You have work, you have office, you have family engagements, so many things are there. But despite all the challenges, somehow or other, Krishna keeps all of us engaged in devotional service. Sometimes it may appear to be more, sometimes it may appear to be less. But the point is, as long as we are engaged in devotional service, that becomes our transcendental opulence. So Kapila Dev is saying that frankly, my dear mother, this transcendental opulence, which Prabhupada translates and explains very clearly in the purport, is really our asset. All other assets that we have will go. They will definitely leave. The only thing that will remain with us is this transcendental asset. And in the purport, Prabhupada nicely defines the transcendental asset as the achievement of devotional service. If you look at the purport, Prabhupada writes, the opulence of a devotee is in his achievement of devotional service. Very important point. Sometimes we may think, what is our asset? Prabhupada has made it clear. The only asset we have is the achievement of devotional service. And the second point that comes when you achieve devotional service is actually this wonderful opulence of the Vaikuntha atmosphere. This is also very important. Devotees are very, 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 very peaceful when they are really performing devotional service. If devotional service does not make someone peaceful, then something must be wrong with the devotional service. The natural byproduct of devotional service is, as Prabhupada writes, the entire opulence of Vaikuntha atmosphere descends into our house. It descends into our home. It descends into our lives. And Prabhupada writes, Vaikuntha atmosphere means peaceful atmosphere with no anxiety. Sure, anxieties will come. They always will come. They come like waves. They never stop. But a devotee who chants, who is reading, who is constantly trying to perform devotional service, he can counteract that anxiety automatically, without separate endeavor, just by achieving devotional service. That is why we always tell persons who come to Krishna consciousness, we never guarantee that your problems go. We don't say that. But we guarantee you that this process gives you the strength to tolerate the problems, to tolerate the anxieties. So, we can test ourselves as devotees how much we have achieved devotional service, in how much peace we actually have in our consciousness. This is a very important point that's given. So the asset is the achievement of devotional service and peaceful atmosphere of Vaikuntha. That's one. So the converse is also true. If there is asset, there is always liability. If we don't have the asset of devotional service, then the liability is we will run after the elevation to the heavenly planets. We will run after these heavenly pleasures in bits and pieces which we think we can get in this material world. Because we have not tasted bhakti, we want to taste something else. So actually, factually speaking, whatever that we try to achieve in this world, by nature it must deteriorate. So what makes us think that all the pleasures of the world without Krishna will last forever? At the same time, one thing Maharaj always reminded us is, the good news he always told me is that because everything is temporary, your miseries are also temporary. In case we think that, oh my God, in this world, there's only misery, misery, misery. Maharaj said, the good news is, while your happiness is temporary, your miseries also cannot last forever. Why? Because either they will die off before you die, or they must die when you die. So either way, it must finally come to an end. So this point we should understand. This is the meaning of asset. This is the meaning of being clear about what transcendental opulence is. Now the second point Prabhupada brings up in the purport, and which is stated here, is Na karhinchin matparaha shantarupe. This shantarupe is very nice. He is addressing actually his mother. But Prabhupada writes there that he is speaking about opulence, this opulence of devotional service. The nature of this devotional service, in order for it to be really opulent, is that it must become fixed. It must become fixed. The word that Maharaj liked is this word sthane. Sthane stitaha. In any situation of life, we can perform devotional service. It's true. We can. But the fact is, the nature of how we fix our devotional service in whatever condition of life will determine the Vaikuntha atmosphere. That's the secret. To the extent that we are fixed in devotional service, to that extent we are free of the anxieties. If we are performing devotional service and always we are disturbed, then we can come to understand that we are not fixed in our devotional service. Today we are very high, tomorrow we are not. Whatever program we start, Maharaj always had the golden rule. Whatever we start as a program, we should never stop. The moment we stop or we slide or we glide, that day the anxieties will come. And Prabhupada was very particular. Whatever you start, Prabhupada told his disciples, never stop. There's no such thing as conditions have changed, therefore we have to stop. Maharaj never allowed that. He never gave concession for that. He said then it is the defect of our devotional service. And he became very displeased. That's why my humble request to all devotees anywhere in the world, whatever we start, we fix it. Sthane, stitaha, and we don't give up. Even if we somehow or another have to struggle, Maharaj said even if you have to die doing the devotional service, that's very good. Why? Because you're dying and you remember Krishna, that's fine. But if you're dying because you say, I can't do the devotional service because there's too much work, it is overwhelming, this is there, that is not here, then even while we are living, Maharaj said we actually did. We actually did. We're like the walking dead. Our life has no purpose. It has no purpose. So this Shantarupa is very important. And Prabhupada writes in the purport that if we really want to be opulent in devotional service, the devotional service must be performed in the mode of pure goodness, Vishuddha Sattva. But in order to come to Vishuddha Sattva, we must pass through this tamasic mode, this rajasic mode, and this sattvic mode. And yesterday we were discussing how the modes of material nature are the most difficult obstacles to overpower or to cross in this material world. Very, very difficult. Very difficult. But Bhagavad Gita tells us very clearly in 14:26 that if we really take up devotional service, then just by discharging bhakti, we can automatically cross the modes of material nature. What's that famous verse? Mam chayo
Yavivichayena
bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityetan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. This is a very important verse because Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells very clearly to Arjuna, my dear Arjuna, the modes of material nature are very strong. Yes, they are very strong. Everyone is born into certain modes. Some of us are naturally passionate. Some of us are naturally sleepy in nature. Some of us are naturally dull. Some of us are naturally very sattvic. Anything happens, we can still tolerate. So these are modes, If you try to get someone in the mode of rajasic to come to sattvic, it's very difficult. If you get someone who's passionate about something and tell him to calm down, chances are he begins to feel very uncomfortable. If you tell someone who's always very calm to become very agitated and do the service, chances are he'll become very disturbed. And if you tell someone who always likes to sleep to always stay awake, he will never talk to you. So like that, the modes of material nature, they fix us. This is the wrong kind of fixing, by the way. This is not the sthane stitaha that we want. This is the forgetfulness of our true constitutional position. So Krishna advises Arjuna at the end of the 14th chapter, my dear Arjuna, one who engages, see the word again is engages. Engages. Maharaj said when you're driving a car, if you put the gear in neutral, car will move. But frankly speaking, it cannot move with purpose. Isn't it true? Because in neutral. The only way the car really comes to life and moves you from point A to point B is when you engage the gear. When you engage the gear is fixed until you re-engage it. That fixing is what propels the car. In the same way, we have to become fixed in the devotional service. Come what may, we must become fixed. So Krishna says one who engages in full, the word is full, not 6:30, not little bit here, little bit there. One who engages in full devotional service. We asked Maharaj what this word full means. And Maharaj said full doesn't mean prasadam has been taken and you become full. Full means that with all your heart, you must perform the service. The service should never be ritual. It should not be motivated because I'm a preaching institution. It should not be motivated because I want this number of people to come for a program. It should not have any kind of ulterior motive, except that we are doing it for Krishna's satisfaction. Maharaj always said preaching is a byproduct of devotional service. We are not interested in numbers. We never get caught up in the numbers game. The success of a congregation never depends on numbers. Never. Never depends on how many programs we have, how many people we have. Maharaj was always against that. What he said was, what makes devotional programs full is whether you are doing it with the full heart. Maharaj was the best example. In Rajkot, very often he would sit one person. There may be two persons at his lotus feet, and he would take Bhagavatam for 3 hours, as if there were 1,000 people sitting. Otherwise, what happens is, if we see only 2 people sitting, very often we think, is it really worth my time to take a long class? Let's just do a bit of discussion, Hari Bol, we finish. No. If we do that, we forget that this study of Bhagavatam, known as preaching, is preaching to our own mind, our own heart. Forget about others. What can we do to change other people? We can't. It's foolishness to think that we are big preachers and we can touch the lives of others. We cannot. We can only do something if our garden is in order. If our garden is not in order, all the talk of Bhagavatam, someone looks at your garden, Prabhu, your garden is rotten. So what is the tattva for? What is the big theory for? So this point we should understand. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances. This is very important. This is the nature of devotional service that we must do. Devotional service must be done in such a way that is unfailing in all circumstances. It's very clear. We are not putting words into Krishna's mouth. Krishna is saying it. In all circumstances, it must be unfailing. There are 2 levels to this point, Maharaj said. First level is that the devotional service nature is that devotional service never fails us. This is a very nice point. Krishna never fails us. If you take up devotional service, he will never let you down. And isn't that what the purport is? Prabhupada writes, if you accept Krishna as a friend, he will never cheat you. If you accept anyone else as a friend, chances are you'll get all the slaps. You will. Even as devotees also, when we become friends with each other, at the very most normally, market rate is your relationships last for a year, 2 years. After that, there is a downward curve. Because there is familiarity and social intercourse. There is no spirit, only matter. But with Krishna, it's all spirit. And because Krishna is so kind, whatever you do, he says it doesn't matter. So in that way, Maharaj says matter goes out of the window and spirit remains. That's why in our relationships, Maharaj said, if you really want spiritual relationships to be successful, tolerate each other. On the basis of if someone is funny, if someone is behaving strange, Maharaj always said, Devaki, it doesn't matter. The moment you say it doesn't matter, matter leaves you. And you only have spirit. But the moment you make it matter, why is it behaving this way? Let's analyze. Let's think. Let's concoct. Then that matter, Maharaj says, catches you. And the moment it catches you, you and I can be talking what we think is Bhagavatam till the cows come home. But at the end of the day, we are still disturbed. Because it has nothing to do with Bhagavatam. This is the first meaning of unfailing. Devotional service never fails us. The second level is that we should also never leave devotional service. In other words, unfailing means avyabhicharena. We should be chaste. Just like a wife or husband are chaste to each other. Just like we are chaste to our spiritual master. We should always be chaste in devotional service to Krishna. It's Krishna and no one else. This should be very clear in our hearts. If someone is like that, then Krishna says, such a person at once can transcend the mode of material nature. He can transcend. And when he transcends the mode of material nature, he can come to the level of Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpati. He comes to the level of Brahman realization, which means he is no longer disturbed by the ups and downs of material life. They may come, but very quickly Krishna gives him the transcendence and the knowledge to cross over this hurdle, cross over that hurdle. Very quickly he does that. The more the devotee is fixed with matter and the devotion service is motivated, then when he is disturbed, it takes him longer between the point of disturbance and the point of losing the disturbance. That it takes a long time. But a devotee who is very fixed, even though he may experience disturbance, but very, very quickly he can come out of it. This is the mood of a great devotee. In the purport of 1426, Maharaj highlighted one particular paragraph which is very important. You can read it when you have time. One should not be disturbed Very nice point Prabhupada says. One should not be disturbed by the activities of the material modes of nature. See, this is the point of opulence. Please, when we discharge devotional service, naturally that other D will come, disturbance. It will come. But when it comes, we should not become disturbed. Instead, we should learn the first lesson that the Avadut learned in his quest for spiritual life. And he learned that from Mother Earth. He says very nicely in the 11th canto, Bhutai akramyamano api dhiro daivo vasanuadi tadvidvan na chalen markat. This is a very important point. He is giving us the way in which we should not be disturbed by the modes. How we should not be disturbed by the modes. He says that Bhutai akramyamano api. We should understand that the living entities will always harass us.
Yes.
This we should accept. A devotee who accepts that, he has already won the first battle. You realize one thing Maharaj always told us. The biggest problem in our life is that we do not accept the condition in which we are placed. That is a starting point of all our disturbances. The day you accept it, Haribol, you are free. Till the point you accept, you are really in difficulty. So when we accept that it is the nature of the material world to disturb us, that day our spiritual life begins. Why? Because bhutai akramyamano abhi. Then we understand that dhiro daivo vasanugayi. Then we understand that the living entities who are disturbing us, they themselves are being harassed by the material modes of nature. Have you seen how sometimes persons, they don't want to scold you. They don't want to disturb you. But somehow or another, it is in their nature, just to say something that will hurt you, or to do something that will complicate matters. So no matter how you try, it just doesn't work out. So this point is very important. We should understand that the living entities who harass us, they themselves are harassed by the material modes. So Bhagavatam tells us it's not their fault. A devotee who understands that it is the hand of the modes of material nature, and who's controlling the material modes of nature finally? Daivo. Daivo means Krishna. Finally, material nature is coming from Krishna. Once one understands that this is also coming from Krishna, to make us better and stronger, even in the test of adversities, then we become what? Dhiraha. Then we become sober. Then we are not touched. Yes, for a while there may be problems. After that, we're alright. We say, it doesn't matter. So the next time today, when a problem comes, an anxiety comes, the easiest way to understand this entire 1426 and to receive the transcendental opulence is in two simple words Maharaj told us. Doesn't matter. It's okay. In that way, we become Dhira. If we say, yes, it matters, we are caught by the matter. So that's why Prabhupada says, one should not be disturbed by the activities of the material modes of nature. Instead, what should we do? Instead of putting his consciousness into these material activities. In other words, instead of thinking of matter, Prabhupada writes, he may. I like the way he uses the word may. Prabhupada says you have a choice. Every living entity has a choice. You want to get slapped by Maya, or you want to come to Krishna. If you want to be slapped, continue to be disturbed. But if you want, you may have the option of transferring your consciousness to Krishna activities. And the moment you transfer your consciousness to Krishna's activities, that means you have transcended the material modes of nature. When Maharaj was speaking on this verse, he stopped and he told his audience that now all of us are living 1426. We are all living it now because we are so engaged in the study of Bhagavatam that none of us are disturbed unless we have to go to work. But that's only for a while. But till then, we are alright. So that way, automatically, whenever you are disturbed, what's the natural thing to do? Pick up your beads. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Or immediately pick up Bhagavatam and turn to any page and say, Krishna, you just give me a verse which is applicable. And since Bhagavatam, every verse is applicable to us. So anytime, anywhere you turn a page, that verse is actually the verse for you. And you become peaceful. This is how we transcend the material modes of nature. This is how devotees maintain their opulence. But there is an easier way to do this. And that comes with the point in the purport which is raised by Prabhupada in the middle of the purport. He says Krishna means not only Krishna, but it means also his devotees. That's why in Bhagavatam 7th canto, 15th chapter, 25th verse, the way to come out of the material modes is described very easily. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says you must do nice bhakti, otherwise cannot come out. But Narada Muni, being his devotee, is more compassionate. In 7th canto, 15th chapter, 25th verse, he tells Yudhishthira Maharaj, Rajas tamascha sadvena. He says, look, the usual way is to come out of material modes. From the lower mode, you go to the higher mode. From the higher mode, you go to the highest mode. So, Rajas tamascha sadvena, sattvam chopasamena cha. And after coming to the mode of material natures of goodness, then you can go to the mode of pure goodness. But, my dear Yudhishthira Maharaj, yetat sarvam guru bhaktya purusho hi anjasa jayet. But there is a simpler way to conquer this entire three modes of material nature automatically. How? Just by serving the lotus feet of a pure devotee with love and devotion. If we just serve the lotus feet of an advanced devotee or a pure devotee or our spiritual masters, automatically Narada Muni guarantees us we will cross over the material modes of nature. So all we have to do now, 3 years after Maharaj departed from this material world, is to just ask ourselves one question. Are we still trying to please him in all the goals that he set out for us before he wound down his mortal pastimes? Are we still on that same page? Are we still promised and are we still sworn to do the things that would please him and not please us? That's the key. That's the key to come out of the material universe. So when we become fixed, Bhagavatam says, then in all circumstances, we will always be peaceful. We will attract what we call, Maharaj says, the sympathy of Krishna. There is that nice verse that Maharaj liked. It is chanted by Brahmaji. It's in the 10th canto, and I think it's in the 14th chapter. 10:14:3. But the translation that Maharaj liked very much about this particular verse is found in Prabhupada's purport of the 2nd canto, 9th chapter, 18th verse. 2:9:18. Easy to remember, 9 times 2, 18. And before that, 2nd canto. So 2:9:18 Maharaj made us remember. Jnane prayasa mudapasya namanta eva jivanti sanmukaritam bhavadiya vatam stane stita jita jito no stane stita srutigatam tanovan manobi ye prayasho jita jito apiyasi aistrilokya. It's a very important verse from Bhagavatam. Jnane prayasam udapasya namanta eva. So Brahmaji is praying to Krishna and saying, my dear Krishna, a devotee who abandons, that's what we must do. We must learn to abandon. It's a very strong word. It means totally you give up. A devotee who abandons the path of empirical philosophical speculation. This is where we always get caught when we are trying to perform devotional service. Instead of simply following what has already been set down for us, we speculate, we concoct. Too many questions and no answers. And while we try so hard to find the answers to questions which will never be answered, the time has passed and the opulences have left us. So one who abandons the path of material, empiric, philosophical speculation, and instead of doing that, he engages himself in hearing the glories of Krishna. This is simply what we should do. We should take Bhagavatam, discuss it, and hear the glories of Krishna. And his activities. From who? Brahmaji says, you must hear it from bona fide sadhu. For us, it's very simple. We just hear from Prabhupada. We hear from all the exalted devotees of our movement. So one who hears the glories of Krishna and his activities from the bona fide sadhu, and who tries to live an honest life. This is very nice. Remember yesterday we read non-deceptive? This is the same point that Bhagavatam is telling us. Lead an honest life. Be straightforward in your dealings with each other. And therefore you will have no time for the politics. You'll only have time for Krishna. Prabhu, let's not talk so much. Let's do Bhagavatam. Prabhu, why we talk so much? Let's chant. These establishing of material familiarity and relationships, they kill the devotional service. We transport that material baggage into the spiritual world, all in the name of getting to know each other better. But we don't realize that we only get to know each other better on the platform of Krishna being in the center. Otherwise, bhutanam yanmitaha kalihi. The dissensions of the living entity will come because of social intercourse. So Brahmaji says, if you abandon philosophical speculation, if you replace it by hearing the glories of Krishna, if you replace it by hearing the activities of Krishna from a bona fide spiritual master, from a bona fide sadhu, and who tries to live an honest life in the occupational engagement of his social life. Very nice. Devotees have a social life. We are very active socially. But our active social life is in performing our occupational engagements very expertly so that we have more time for Krishna. That's it. We have to work. We have to sustain ourselves. But every day we go into work, we sign our employment contract at the start of the day. At the end of the day, adhaya brahmani, brahmani adhaya karmani. What happens to us at the end of the day? At the end of the day, we resign from our work. Adhaya. So daily you get employed, and Maharaj says daily you are fired. Or before you are fired, at least you resign. So daily you do your work, by the end of the day you resign from your work. And the moment you resign from your work, what happens to you? Lipyena nasa papena. Whatever sinful actions there may be, they also leave you when you resign. Just like you become Padma Patra Ivam Basaha. You become just like a lotus flower in mud. The lotus flower is never touched by mud, and whatever falls on the lotus flower, drops of water, they don't stay. They have to fall off. This is how a devotee should live in this world. We are in this world, but we are not of this world. There is a difference, but it is very important. Such a person, Brahmaji concludes in this verse, can conquer your sympathy. And one who conquers the sympathy of Krishna, he has conquered all the transcendental opulences. That means he is fully engaged in it. See the beautiful connection between proper engagement, coming out of the material modes of nature, and becoming fixed just to satisfy Krishna. That should be our duty. What would satisfy our spiritual master? What would satisfy Prabhupada? And what would satisfy Krishna? Now, after seeing the transcendental opulence, then Kapila Dev tells his mother, two things in this world cannot touch this bhakti if you are fully engaged. What are they? Weapons cannot touch, and time cannot touch. The greatest weapon of material nature is actually time. It is time. Because Krishna sends time, and the nature of time is it must pass. See, it's already 7:50. It must pass. No matter what you and I do, we cannot stand still in this material world. And the nature of this material world governed by time is bhaudikanam cha bhavanam. That means whatever you have will deteriorate. So we must be foolish to think that whatever we have will remain. How can it remain when by nature it must go? So how can anything good that appears to be good in this world remain good? The only thing that can remain good in this world is that which is not of this world, and that is devotional service. This we must become clear. Otherwise we run after each other, hopelessly trying to find some kind of happiness. But in that happiness which is short-lived, it is worse when you achieve it for a while and then you lose it. So Vaikuntha atmosphere means there is no influence of time. Time doesn't touch a devotee. Why? Because Maharaj says he doesn't waste time. The devotee's body may deteriorate, but his consciousness does not deteriorate with time. That's why Brahmaji is the oldest possible personality in the universe. But the good news is he's not senile. He's not senile. If he was senile, we would be really remiss to read his prayers. Because we wouldn't know what he's writing actually. Could be the makings and writings of a senile personality. But Brahmaji himself says in Bhagavatam that I am not senile because I am forever fixed at the lotus feet of the Lord. Drita Hari. Because he's fixed at the lotus feet of the Lord, time doesn't touch Brahmaji. Our body may go, but Krishna will protect the consciousness, and that is our asset, the consciousness of bhakti. So, Maharaj said, if you don't want to be touched by time, Devaki, then don't waste it. One who wastes time, he loses time. One who doesn't waste time, he gains time. And Maharaj said we should have no time for two things. We should have no time to criticize others. That's the first thing that's very important. We have no time to criticize others. And second, because we are fully engaged in devotional service, we should have no time to fall sick. Maharaj said, even to fall sick, you should have some time. You should feel that I have some time to rest, I need time to take some medicine. But if you are fully engaged in devotional service, then Maharaj said you should have no time to criticize, and you should have no time to fall sick. Haridas Thakur, his disappearance is today. He had no time for anything but chanting of the holy names. If someone wanted to come and give him any form of sense gratification, he would just tell that person, like he told that prostitute, you please sit down, I have to finish my rounds, and then whatever you want I shall serve you. But because he never finished his rounds, then she had no opportunity to actually get what she wanted materially. And he had no opportunity to be caught in matter. So we should never put a full stop to our devotion service. We should never say, this is my limitation. These are the only things I can do for Krishna. That means you are putting aside time to do something for Maya. You're not saying it in so many words, but you are creating an opportunity for you to do other things apart from devotion service. And that's why Maharaj said, live in this world in such a way that you have no time to breathe. Except going to work, coming to take care of the children just for a while, and performing devotional service. There should just be enough time to sleep for a while. But a Vaishnava is not interested in anything else. Which brings us to the last point of time. And what is that about time? Maharaj said that a Vaishnava is never interested in past, present, or even the future. He is not interested. Frankly speaking, he is only interested in present insofar as he is performing devotional service. Even then, it is only useful because it presents a platform to perform bhakti. Who you are in the past doesn't concern a Vaishnava. Who you will be in the future doesn't concern a Vaishnava. That's why Maharaj said, whatever we may have been in the past, every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. Devotees are not concerned to mark someone, oh Prabhu, last time he was this, Mataji, last time he was there. All that becomes prajalpa and we forget Krishna. Whatever that person is today, he's that person. That's why Maharaj always told us, the same person who was a great devotee yesterday could become murderer tomorrow. If he becomes murderer tomorrow, it's alright. We have to accept it. If he's a devotee, we also have to accept that he is a devotee. But in both sides we should see the Daivo, the hand of Krishna, and then we become Dhiro. 2 Ds. If you have Krishna with you, Daivo, then automatically the presence of Krishna transforms into a behavior. And what is that behavioral characteristic? Dhira. Sobriety. That is the mood of a devotee. And in that mood, a devotee is free of anxiety. You know, Vaishnava, Maharaj told us this story in Bengal. You know, there was this wise man known as Gopal. He was the equivalent of Birbal and the equivalent of Tenali Raman. You know? So what happened was this Gopal, one day he was in the house and he was just having some prasad. When suddenly he heard his 2 neighbors, one old man and woman, shouting and banging pots and pans and screaming at each other. So he rushed there and he asked them, what has happened? And the old man was very angry. He was in the middle of an argument. He was telling his wife that, you know, how can your cows break my pots? And the wife was telling him, you know, so what? You have put the pots in the shed. My cows have to stay in the shed. So Gopal looked out of their house and he looked back inside and said, where are your cows? And where are the pots? And the man stopped and said, Gopal, we were just discussing that now we have saved this much money. And with this much money we are going to buy this many cows. And my wife told me that, okay, you're going to buy cows, now I want to buy some pots. And with these pots, you know, I want to make something and sell. And then we said, okay, good. Then I said, I'm going to build a shed to keep the cows. And wife said, there also I want to build something to keep the pots. And then I told her, how can you keep the pots next to the cows? And she said, no, what's wrong? I'll keep them in the cupboard. And I said, no, the cows will be disturbed. And she said, no, your cows should leave because they will actually destroy the pots. And then they started fighting in front of Gopal again. And Gopal stopped them and said, wait a minute, the cows haven't come and the pots are not there. So why are you fighting? They said, no, we are planning. This is what logic, we have to plan. These things we have to foresee. Suddenly Gopal went and saw a broom. He picks up the broom, Maharaj says, and he starts hammering the old man at the back. Now wife suddenly becomes good friend of her husband. And she says, Gopal, stop it. Why are you doing that? And Gopal says, I'm beating him because his cows have entered into my compound and they are now eating my vegetables. So how can you allow your cows to come into the vegetable patch? And the man said, there are no cows, Gopal. And Gopal said, that's what I just said. And Maharaj said, this is how we waste our time. We spend so much time in things that haven't happened, that may or may not happen. But a devotee whose dhira says, it doesn't matter. And then he gains the opulence of devotional service. So this is how time and any form of weapons does not touch a devotee who is fixed in unflinching devotional service. Why? Because now we come to the last two lines of the verse. A devotee is not touched by weapons nor time. His opulence of devotional service is protected by Krishna only because of one qualification. Yesham aham priya atmasutascha. A devotee who accepts Krishna as his most dear object of love, that acceptance protects his devotional service. Very important point. Acceptance. And in this point, Maharaj said, when you accept Krishna, it only means one thing. You follow his instructions. Ye me matam midam nityam anutishtanti manavaha shraddhavanto anasuyanto devi karma bihi muchyante.
Muchyante karma.
Third chapter, 31st verse. Very important verse. Krishna says very clearly there, one who obeys and accepts my matam, injunction. And how do you accept it? You accept it with full faith and without envy. Maharaj says, if you accept it in a grudging way, what to do? I have to accept it. That means you're envious. Because you think you know better than Krishna. Subtly you're telling Krishna, you know what? I don't deserve this. But since you're giving it to me, what can I do? This is envy actually. It is subtle envy. Sometimes we don't realize that, but it is envy. So once I asked Maharaj, how can one be envious of the spiritual master? Maharaj says, very simple. If you don't follow my instructions, you're envious of me. I said, I don't see the connection. Maharaj said, one who has full faith in the spiritual master, whatever the spiritual master says, he knows it is for his good. But if one thinks he knows better than the spiritual master, and the spiritual master tells him something else, subtly he thinks, I'm greater than you. So if you tell me something, and I know something better, why should I follow you? That is envy. Then I realized, my God, that's the connection between envy and not following instructions. We don't want to accept that we are actually envious. That's why we don't want to follow simple instructions. So Krishna says, one who follows instructions with faith, without envy, then what happens? Such a person really becomes free. He becomes free of karmas. He becomes free of the effects of all the activities. And therefore, he is free of the material modes. That's the connection. But Prabhupada writes also, or he translates very nicely. The next verse immediately Krishna says very nicely. One who disregards my teachings. What happens to such a person? Three things Maharaj says, and Krishna makes it very clear. One who out of envy disregards the teachings of Krishna. Then three things happens. He becomes bereft of all knowledge. We may read all the verses and know all the shlokas in the world. Maharaj said, we may vainly boast, I've been in the movement for 20, 30, 40 years, I'm a senior devotee. But finally, we may have all the knowledge. If we cannot apply that knowledge, we are bereft of knowledge. Second point, not only we become bereft of all knowledge, but we become befooled. Translation, befooled. We think that we are very smart, but frankly Krishna fools us. We think that we know so many things, but actually we are the foolish person, because we don't want to follow simply the instructions. And third thing, we become ruined in our endeavors for perfection. That phrase sounds very scary. We become ruined, totally destroyed in our endeavors for perfection. We think we will become perfect based on our own concoctions. But Bhagavad Gita says, until you follow, until you accept Krishna as the dear most object of love. We cannot say, Maharaj says hypocritically, Krishna, I accept you. And then when Krishna gives an instruction, I'm sorry Krishna, I can't follow. How can it be then you have accepted him? That's not true. Better we directly say that we have not accepted Krishna and be honest about it. And then strive to accept Krishna. Then to say acceptance means, I don't follow instructions, but I accept you. That doesn't work. And one who accepts Krishna, he only holds on to the lotus feet of Krishna. He doesn't hold on to anything else. He only takes shelter of the devotees, their mercy, and the mercy of the Lord. Avasmitam tam paripurna kamam swaneva labhena samam prashantam vinopasapati aparam hi balisha swalangulena atititati sindhu. There's one verse that Maharaj liked very much. I think it's 6th canto, 9th chapter, maybe 21st or 22nd verse. And the translation is very nice. Krishna is described as paripurna kamam, one who is fully satisfied in himself and never wonderstruck by anything, because he is the most wonderful personality. So Maharaj said, the moment we catch hold of Krishna in devotional service, nothing is so wondrous in this world anymore. Nothing is so disastrous in this world anymore. Nothing is so surprising in this world anymore. So we become peaceful. And because Krishna is self-satisfied, we also naturally become self-satisfied. Whatever that comes, we accept as Krishna's mercy. Then Bhagavatam tells us that that Supreme Personality of Godhead is the only shelter of everyone. Anyone who is trying to be protected by others is certainly a first-class fool. If we think that persons who are also caught in the same net as we are can protect us, then we are foolish. It's like the fish who told the other fish who are all caught in the same net, my friend, don't worry, I know the way out. If you knew the way out, why were you caught in the first place? Only the person out of the net can say, my dear friend, I know the way out. Then you have confidence, yeah, he knows the way out because he's outside the net. So Krishna is the person we should hold on to. And holding on means acceptance. Acceptance means following instructions. That's the practical thing. And Bhagavatam concludes by saying, just like we hold on to the tail of a dog, supposing we have a pet dog, the dog goes into the ocean, you throw something, you say fetch, the dog goes into the ocean, it looks like it can swim, and it goes a little bit far and picks it. The foolish man thinks, oh, my pet dog can swim, so let me hold on to his tail and cross the ocean. If you try doing that, the dog will drown, and you will drown with the dog. So this is the nature of the material world. We are catching on the tail of the dog and thinking that we can cross this material birth and death easily. But we don't realize, samasvitaye padapallava plavam mahatpadam punya yasho murale bhavaram buddhir varsapadam param padam 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 vipadam natesham. Very important verse. In this verse, 10th canto also, 14th chapter, Brahmaji says that Krishna is the only shelter, sama ashritaye, padapallava plavam, that his lotus feet are the only way in which we can cross over this terrible ocean of material birth and death. But how do we do it? We do it very simply. If we take up devotional service and are always under the shelter of Krishna, if we are fixed, if we are not prone to mental speculations, then what happens? This devotional service becomes our asset. And Maharaj says, a great ocean which is very big, you have a boat that brings you from one end to the other. In one lecture, Maharaj says, supposing the boat brings one devotee from here to there. After the boat goes there, it doesn't come back. So how's the next devotee going to go across? It's a practical problem. So Maharaj says, this is where Krishna is very kind. Bhavar ambudir vatsa padam padam param padam. He says Krishna shrinks that entire ocean into such a small passage. Like the calf of a hoof, the hoof print of a calf, little bit of water is there. It's not very difficult to cross over. And that crossing over and that shrinking is actually the boat of devotional service. It's a very beautiful allegory that Maharaj gave. Very nice, very easily he had put it. And this is how we cross over this terrible ocean. So the conclusion to the verse is in the last paragraph of the purport. Krishna will never cheat us. Very important point, prabhus, mataris. If you are connected to Krishna, he will never cheat you. So even if we are disturbed in this world, but fixed in devotional service, we should have full faith that in any condition of life, Krishna never cheats us. When Jatayu, who is just an animal, what did he do? All he did was try to save Sita from the clutches of Ravana. Jatayu used to be the most powerful of the birds. By the time he saw Ravana, Ravana was too much powerful for him. And Jatayu was a retired former king. But even then, he never thought of his life, of his living. He only thought of his service. That I should perform this service. What was his service? To try and serve Sita Mata by taking her out of Ravana's grasp. That was his service. He didn't consider, I'm not really strong, can't do the service. He thought, so what if I am having these problems? Let's do the service. That's all that matters. And Maharaj said, this is something we should take when we are doing service. We don't have to be in perfect condition. We don't have to have perfect condition to do service. But somehow or another we have to do it. We have to do it. Even we have to die. Better you die doing service. Otherwise you'll die doing Maya. So that's what Jatayu did. And when he flew up, he was so inspired to fight that for a while it looked like Ravana was really having problems. But finally, Ravana was too strong. And with a slash of his sword, he dismembered that wing of Jatayu. And when Jatayu fell, he fell in a fatal fall. And when Ram came and Lakshman came, they thought first Jatayu must be a Rakshasa. They were a bit afraid of him. But when Jatayu turned to them and said, my dear Lord, I am your servant, but unworthy. Because I tried to perform the service, but I failed. I did not achieve the result. Lord Ram told him, the result is not important to me. It is the act of your sincere service that is important. And then when Jatayu died, Lord Ram told Lakshman that today I am not mourning for Sita. I may have felt the great separation from Sita, but today my mourning is for the loss of life of a great devotee. Because he served me even though he did not have capacity to. It doesn't matter to me that he failed to save Mother Sita. That's beside the point. That's a byproduct. But what really matters to me was that he put all his heart and all his soul into that service. And then Lord Ram did what is the greatest thing that is stated here. That he accepted Jatayu as his father. And he performed the last rites for Jatayu there on that place. And the place where Ravana kills Jatayu, we spent some time with Maharaj in Nasik. It's very close to where we stayed with Maharaj. And one afternoon Maharaj took us there. It's a desolate place. It's grey, it's dark, nothing grows on the ground. And Maharaj told us this is the spot where Jatayu left his life. And up here is the spot where he fought with Ravana. And Maharaj made us sit down there and we read Bhagavatam. And Maharaj said, in this place, in this unglamorous surroundings, the Supreme Lord saw the glamour of a devotee. Because he was only interested in the opulence that the devotee possessed. Not the opulence of a great Jatayu, but the opulence of a weak Jatayu, but who was very strong in his devotional service. And the same thing happened with this great devotee known as Ishwar Rai. In Dwarka, if you go to Dwarka, you see the temple in Bed Dwarka, Dwarkanath. And Ishwar Rai used to be a great devotee who just performed only one service for Dwarkanath. Every day he would bring water for the deity and to wash the deity's lotus feet. He did that for years until he became so old that one day his limbs could not move. Arthritis, rheumatism, Maharaj said, he couldn't move. So he was only in the shed and he was praying and lamenting to Dwarkadish that Dwarkadish, my body has failed me, but my heart is very strong. I want to do service for you. How am I going to do it? And thinking that way, he went to sleep. Because he thought in morning I should be washing his lotus feet, but I can't do that service. Late in the night, Ishwarai had a dream. In that dream, he heard a knock, 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 knock. And then he woke up and he thought, wait a minute, that was a funny dream. Someone knocking on my door. Then he opened his eyes, realized somebody's really knocking on my door. It's late in the night. He goes up to the door and opens it. And who is there? Dwarkanath is there. The deity is standing all fours, looking very opulent, but looking here and there and looking a little bit transcendently anxious. So then Ishwarai says, my lord, what are you doing standing outside my house? You're supposed to be in the temple. And he says, that's why I'm telling you, now hurry up. Before they wake up from Mangalati and find that I'm gone, I brought the cart. I'm going to put you on the cart, bring you to my temple. There you can take the water and you can pour on my lotus feet. And Ishwarai said, why would you do that for me, my lord? And Dwarkanath said, because you have desire to serve me. And I have accepted you as you have accepted me. So this is how I reciprocate with you. I will never cheat you. And in that dead of night, Ishwarai was carried from his humble shed into the cart. Dwarkanath sits in the front, and with the bullock cart in the middle of the night, there's a beautiful painting there. The Lord in deity form, riding bullock cart, bringing his old devotee who's bent over, cannot move at the back of the cart. And this is exactly what Prabhupada writes in the book. If you accept Krishna as your friend, he will never cheat you. If you accept him as spiritual master, he will always guide you. If you accept him as your chosen deity, he will always allow you to worship him. If you accept him as your son, he will never fail you. And he will definitely outlive you. In that way, where is the loss if we are totally 10% engaged in devotional service? Time doesn't touch us. Weapons do not touch us. The great opulence of Vaikuntha atmosphere descends into our lives. And this is the real mood in which we should perform the devotional service. So please remember one thing. Maharaj told us that until and unless we engage our senses with Krishna, our senses will always be engaged with Maya. If you are with Maya, then you are with matter. And if you are with matter, then all the opulences you have, which are material, will go. But if we really accept Krishna, and we accept him on the strength of the instructions of Guru, Sastra and Sadhu, then we will always be peaceful in the discharge of our devotional service. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Srila Gurudev ki
Jai.
Jai Gaura Premanand. Who am I seeing here? Sajan Prabhu ki. So this is the greatness of devotional service. Any questions, any comments, any realizations?
When we are in a
Yes,
midst of difficulty, Prabhuji, it's very easy to waver. And there's so many instructions, as you have said, but the practical part of it is that we don't have enough faith in Krishna. So it's very easy to waver and start doubting. So
Yes.
as you said, so look into Bhagavatam, look into have faith in Krishna, take his holy names and all. I mean, can you a little bit elaborate on that?
If you are in difficulty, then the devotee should understand on the strength of transcendental knowledge that difficulties are part and parcel of this material world. If a devotee accepts that what is surprising about difficulties, then Prabhu automatically half the battle is won. Because then it is surprising if there is no difficulty. You see, it's a paradigm shift, but it comes on the transcendental knowledge of Bhagavatam. Only if we accept this point that Bhagavatam gives us, can we actually see things as they are. If a devotee still continues devotional service and expect that this world will become a better place to live in, then he's going to be in trouble. But if he takes up devotional service while accepting that where he's staying is always going to be problematic,
Yes.
then he becomes peaceful. He has more time to concentrate on devotional service and gradually accept that these sufferings are going to keep coming like waves. Why should I be bothered about the waves that keep coming? Let me concentrate on that which is the real purpose of my existence. Then he becomes peaceful. So that would be a useful starting point, Prabhuji. And that comes if we thoroughly study and practice Bhagavatam. And it must be repeated. We must repeatedly go back to this point. That's why repeatedly we have to study Bhagavatam. Repeatedly we have to come together to hear Bhagavatam. One time hear Bhagavatam, 1 year later, one more time, it's not going to work. Once a week, if we can hear Bhagavatam together, study together, then you'll find a big difference in your consciousness. Big difference. Supposing Monday to Friday you're busy. At least on Saturday or Sunday, surely we can create time to sit down and hear Bhagavatam and study. Once a month to meet for Bhagavatam means we are going to die in material nature. It's too long. The transcendental modes, the material modes of nature are too strong. We need this rejuvenation as much as possible. That's why Maharaj urged us every day. Daily we should first do personal study. And weekly we should come together. Our Saturdays and Sundays should be filled with hearing Bhagavatam and practicing it. We must do that. It will be difficult. But if Jatayu thought, it's too difficult, would he have got the mercy of Lord Ram? If we also think something is difficult, then how to attract the mercy of Krishna? So it flows, you see. Is that helpful, Prabhu?
Yes. Thanks.
Jain Prabhu, anything?
One thing say the time, we experience the time.
Yes.
Then in Bhagavatam, in the Vaikuntha planets, they don't experience the time.
Yes, Prabhu.
But time exists right there too, but they don't experience
Time
it.
doesn't exist.
Time doesn't exist. They don't have any.
When you read the Kingdom of God, in the third canto, description of the Kingdom of God, you'll find that over there it's very clearly stated that the time element is not present in the spiritual world. So when you speak of time in the spiritual world, it doesn't mean that there is deterioration. Sometimes people say, hey, if there's no time, then how come Krishna has a morning leela and he has an evening leela? Why is it that, the sun appears to set in Vrindavan and it appears to come? That must mean time. Some people are very picky about that. But what Bhagavatam tells us is, the time element of deterioration is missing there. Krishna continues his pastimes eternally. There's no time for it. It runs always. So the time factor is not present. That is what is meant in Bhagavatam. It doesn't touch him. So we can also be untouched to an extent. If we don't waste it, then time is spent for Krishna. That's why I remember Radhanath Maharaj saying this nice point. He says that a devotee who's so busy and has no time is the one who has the most time. Because Krishna frees more and more time. And I remember asking Maharaj, how to wake up for Mangalarti every morning when we sleep 2-3 hours in the night because we are busy, we're waking late. Maharaj said, if we sincerely want to wake up for Mangalarti in the morning, Krishna can make your 2 hours of sleep feel like it's 6 hours.
Yes.
He can do that if he wants, because time is his. Why will he not help a devotee who's sincerely trying to wake up for Mangalarti? He won't. He won't place obstacles. He will help you. But it's the mind that will tell you, only 2 hours sleep, I need more, I will fall sick. You haven't fallen sick. But by the time your mind tells you, you will fall sick. And this is how the time factor catches us in this material. Is that helpful? Amna Prabhu, is there anything? Punendu Prabhu? So we'll end here, and Krishna willing see each other at some point. I just need to take 1 or 2 calls before the day ends in Singapore, and then I will come out and join you. Balaram Prabhu, I'll just do a Skype. I've got it fixed up. I'll just go inside for a few minutes. Is that okay? Jai Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Srila Mahavishnu Goswami Gurudev ki
Jai.
Nitai Gaura Premanand.
Hari.